A sharp click cut through the hushed lobby as Ava Sinclair's folder hit the mahogany counter. "We don't serve people like you here," the teller said without looking up. "Tell us where you're watching from." Her voiceover crackled in Ava's mind as an impossible thought. 5 minutes. That was all the time on the countdown she'd started the second she walked in. 5 minutes to prove she belonged, or walk away under the weight of every sideways glance in Ivory Tower Private Bank. Ava took a steadying breath. The lobby's chandelier lights glittered off the marble floor, but she felt like she was standing under a microscope. The teller's words stung, but she refused to blink first. She lifted her chin, pressed her school ID and internship check, $10,000 from Nova Capital's summer program, toward him. "I'm depositing this," she said, voice firm. "My name is Ava Sinclair." He snorted softly, still studying her as if there was a hidden watermark on her skin. He leaned back in his swivel chair, folding his arms like a judge about to issue a ruling. Behind her, distant whispers spiraled. "Is that the CEO's daughter? Why is she being treated like a criminal? That's harsh." Ava felt her pulse thump in time with the bank's ornate clock-mounted heartbeat. An audio cue she'd later tell her friends reminded her of a bomb's timer. 5 minutes. A pair of heels clicked on marble. Victoria Hayes, the bank's VIP manager, appeared like a specter in ivory. Her posture was immaculate, her expression cold luxury. She paused behind the teller, folding her arms. "For someone of your pedigree," Victoria said in a voice that tasted of polished wood, "you'll understand our need to verify every detail." Ava gripped the folder tighter. Her palms tingled. "I've brought all the paperwork, my ID, my offer letter, the check itself. I don't need any special clearance." Victoria's lips curved into a smirk. "Clearance is exactly what you need." She tapped a manicured nail on the counter. "Wait here." The teller slid Ava's documents back. "I'll call you when it's approved." Ava backed off, her world narrowing to that chair by the reception desk. She sank into it, folder clutched like armor. Her heart pounded so loud she was certain everyone in the lobby could hear it. Across the way, a well-dressed couple swept past and were greeted by another teller with warm smiles. A private client lounge door clicked open for them. No such courtesy appeared for her. She closed her eyes. "Don't look weak." She pictured her mother's face, Valerie Sinclair on the cover of Fortune, founder of Nova Capital, 18% shareholder in this very bank. But Ava needed this to be her moment, not Valerie's. She opened her eyes to find the teller returning, escorting her back to the counter. "Everything seems in order," he said, voice softer now. "We can process your deposit." Relief should have flooded her, but it was tainted by the guarded stare of Victoria, her next move too obvious. "Miss Sinclair," Victoria interjected, voice low enough only Ava could hear. "My office, now." Her heart lurched. "Why?" "Policies," Victoria replied with a shrug. "Please follow me." Ava exhaled, rose, and followed her down a short hallway. Around the corner, the office's glass walls offered a narrow view of the lobby, an audience waiting for a spectacle. Victoria closed the door behind them. "Do you really think you can handle being the CEO's daughter on your own?" She studied Ava over the rim of her desk. "Are you prepared for scrutiny?" Ava squared her shoulders. "I've prepared for this my whole life." Victoria searched her face, as if deciding if Ava's confidence was genuine. She nodded once. Clipped. Back to the counter. "Let's get this done." 5 minutes left on the clock. That last detail felt like an accusation. 5 minutes to deposit a check. Ava forced a polite nod and retreated. Back at the counter, she slid the check across. The teller counted quietly, then handed her the deposit slip. "There you go." Ava pressed her signature, heart hammering. The folder slipped from her grip, papers fanning out. She knelt to gather them, cheeks burning as the lobby watched. Click, click. The clock's hands moved. Less than 2 minutes left. She rose, paper secure, and started toward the exit, only to hear Victoria's voice again, broadcasting across the lobby. "Miss Sinclair will be joining me in the boardroom shortly." Ava froze. Boardroom. In 5 minutes. Behind her, whispers turned to murmured questions. The blood pounded in her ears. What now? But she remembered her countdown, the Nova Ethics app silently capturing every harsh word, every icy stare. 5 minutes to watch her mother transform this spectacle into justice. 5 minutes until silent power cut through prejudice like a scalpel. Ava squared her chin and walked toward the boardroom doors, heartbeat echoing her resolve. She belonged here just as much as anyone. no matter what they tried to tell her. Ava left the bank building with her head held high, even though every step still echoed with that telltale chill of prejudice. The bright afternoon sun in Midtown Manhattan felt almost warm, a stark contrast to the cold reception she'd just endured. But by the time she slid into the back seat of her mother's sleek black sedan, something in her chest had shifted. Embarrassment had given way to a quiet resolve as the car eased through traffic. She studied the city skyline. In those towers of glass and steel, deals worth millions were struck every day. Deals her mother's firm, Nova Capital, specialized in turning failing companies into industry leaders. Valerie Sinclair had built that empire from scratch, dragging dusty old textile mills and bankrupt tech startups to profitability. Now, Nova Capital had nearly $12 billion under management, and its founder held 18% of Ivory Tower Bank's shares. Yet none of that pedigree mattered this morning. Only Ava's skin color and age had counted. "You did fine today," her mother said, voice steady as the car glided onto Park Avenue. She glanced in the rearview mirror and offered a small, proud smile. "They'll see what they just lost." Ava closed her eyes briefly. "I just wanted to show them I'm not your daughter. I'm me." Valerie let that sink in. "I know," she said. "And you did? That check will clear, and you'll be fine." But Ava felt the knot in her stomach loosen only a little. The real proving ground lay ahead. Her summer internship, starting tomorrow. She'd spend every morning at Nova Capital's headquarters on the 52nd floor of the Park Tower building. There, she'd sit in on pitch meetings, dig through financials, and, most important, earn respect entirely on her own merits. That evening, the apartment on the Upper East Side smelled of lemon and fresh herbs. Ava peeled off her blazer and hung it carefully, no wrinkles, before slipping into jeans and a simple white tee. In the kitchen, her mother was at the island, reviewing reports on a tablet. "Need help with anything?" Ava asked, reaching for a mug. Valerie shook her head. "Just catching up on tomorrow's board materials. You'll be sitting in for me on the Northview acquisition." Ava's heart skipped. Northview Textile was rumored to be Nova's next big turnaround. "Really?" she said, trying not to let it sound like panic. "Me," her mother nodded, sliding the tablet across. "I want you to see how these deals come together. You're ready." Ava sank onto a stool. The glowing spreadsheet showed a company losing revenue fast, with mounting debts and shrinking market share. "This is a mess," she said, eyes wide. "It was a mess," Valerie replied. "Now watch what we do with it." They talked late into the night. Projections, debt ratios, potential buyers. Ava asked questions, scribbled notes, and for the first time since she could remember, felt truly in her element. She wasn't just Valerie Sinclair's daughter. She was a financial detective, piecing together clues in balance sheets. Later, in her bedroom, Ava thumbed through the internship packet, security badges, software logins, a photo of the office floor plan. She imagined herself at that long conference table, colleagues leaning in as she presented a valuation summary. Goosebumps rose on her arms, not from nerves, but from excitement. That's when she finally let herself replay the morning moment by moment. The teller's sneer, Victoria's cold dismissal, the whispers and stares. Instead of shame, she now felt something sharper, a determination that whatever came next, she'd meet it on her own terms. The next morning dawned clear and brisk, dressed in a charcoal blazer and crisp blouse. Ava rode the elevator to 52. When the door slid open, she stepped into Nova Capital's reception, a sweeping atrium with polished travertine floors, a sculpture that looked like a giant crystal cluster, and a discreet sign reading Nova Capital, turning potential into performance. Behind the desk, Mrs. Chen, the executive assistant, looked up. "Good morning, Miss Sinclair." Her tone was warm and genuine. No hesitation there. "Your badge is ready, and your first meeting is in conference room 5B at 9. "Oh," Ava swallowed. "Thank you." She tapped her badge on the reader, and the doors clicked open. Corridors stretched on either side, lined with glass-walled offices. Inside one, a junior analyst was explaining revenue trends to a partner. In another, the soft hum of negotiation floated out. As Ava walked, she kept her head level, shoulders back, a small signal that she belonged. At 9, on the dot, she slipped into the boardroom. The table was ringed with a half-dozen senior associates and 2 partners, one of whom was her mother, speaking in crisp, Authoritative tones. Valerie paused mid-sentence and offered Ava a nod. "Good morning," she said. "I'd like Ava to join us today." Heads turned, smiles spreading. Not a flicker of surprise, only recognition that Ava had earned that seat. The meeting dove straight into projections, Northview's cash flow, its asset liquidation potential, the risks of supply chain exposure. Ava listened first, then raised her hand to ask about their plan for employee retention post-acquisition. The room went quiet for a heartbeat. Then her mother, always proudest of Ava's strategic mind, answered. "That's exactly the angle we need," Valerie said. "Thank you, Ava." Ava felt a surge of pride, different from the fierce, defiant pride this morning. This was a quiet, rightful pride. She'd steered the discussion with a thoughtful question, not a reaction to injustice. Afterward, a few associates came up to introduce themselves. "Nice point about retention," one said. "You've got a good head for this." "Thanks," Ava replied, surprised at how easy it felt. Back at her desk, a sleek station overlooking Central Park, she opened her laptop and drafted an email to the Northview team, summarizing the retention strategy. Every keystroke reminded her that this world, so full of numbers and power plays, was where she thrived. By lunchtime, she met her mother for a quick bite in the firm's cafeteria. They found a quiet corner. Valerie studied her. "How's your first day going?" Ava leaned back. "Honestly, better than I imagined." Her mother smiled, but there was something gentler in her eyes. A mix of maternal pride and respect for Ava's independence. "You deserve it," she said. Ava knew that was true. Today was proof. She could navigate high-stakes finance as well as anyone. No special treatment required. And though Ivory Tower Bank might have underestimated her this morning, Nova Capital already knew her worth. That night, as Ava walked home under streetlights, she replayed the day's highlights. The way Miss Chen greeted her, the nod from her mother in the boardroom, the firm handshakes from associates who saw her first as an analyst. Not a legacy. She tapped her phone, opening Nova Ethics app's log from this morning's bank ordeal. It was buried under her performance metrics, a silent testament to how far she'd come between one hostile counter and the next. Ava smiled to herself. The world might still test her, judge her on her appearance or her name. But she had her own story to tell now, and she intended to write it one deal, one hard-earned victory at a time. Ava stood at the VIP counter again, clutching her folder like a shield. The mahogany surface gleamed under the bank's soft lights, but it felt harder than any fortress. She'd been here before, slammed into this exact spot by the teller's curt dismissal and Victoria's thinly veiled scorn. But today, the experience felt deeper, more personal. "Miss Sinclair," the teller said, tapping his pen impatiently against the counter. "We still need your mother's special authorization form, signed and notarized, and a letter from Nova Capital confirming your internship role." Ava's jaw tightened. She'd already handed over her school ID, the original internship offer letter, and the official check. Now he wanted a notarized form she hadn't even known existed. She pressed her lips together, recalling the rising tide of whispers behind her. Is she someone's daughter? Probably can't do her own banking. She must think money grows on trees. She drew in a slow breath, tested her voice. "With all due respect, I don't have those documents. I brought everything I was instructed to bring." He didn't look up. "I'm sorry." "Me?" "Sinclair. But this is the policy. I can't proceed without it." Ava's pulse hammered. Under other circumstances, she might have raised her voice, demanded respect. But she remembered her mother's advice. Control the narrative by staying composed. Power wears restraint well. She managed a nod and set her folder on the counter. "Then I'll wait. I'll call my mother from my school phone if I need to." "Phones aren't allowed at the counter," the teller interrupted, eyes flicking to a small no-phone sign. "We have business to conduct here." The words felt like nails on glass. She forced her expression neutral, even polite.
"Very well."
As she turned to find a seat, she caught sight of a family of three, well-dressed, smiling, gliding past. The husband placed a briefcase on the counter and was immediately escorted to a private lounge. Warm greetings, iced water, genuine interest. No one asked them for degrees of separation or notarized forms. Ava's chest tightened. The double standard was so blatant it should have felt insulting. Instead, it felt enraging. A wave of heat flushed her cheeks. Every rule they applied to her, they waived for those people. She sank onto the cold leather chair, folded her hands over her lap, and closed her eyes. attempting to steady her breathing. She counted to 4 on the inhale, 4 on the exhale, techniques her debate coach had taught her when she felt pressure mounting on stage. When she opened her eyes, the bank lobby looked the same. Polished floors, discreet digital displays, potted ferns in the corners. But to Ava, it felt as hostile as a courtroom full of judges primed to convict. The minutes dragged by. Each turned tick of the clock was a reminder that she was a test case, a spectacle of special treatment gone wrong. Her documents lay clasped tight against her chest in her lap. She thought of Nova Capital's high-rise headquarters, the camaraderie of her first day as an intern, the nods of respect she'd earned from colleagues. Here, she felt stripped of all that. Just another teenager to be tested, doubted, and dismissed. Finally, the teller re-emerged. Documents in hand, he slid them across. "Everything checks out now. Your deposit will go through." Relief flared up in her chest, but was instantly smothered by Victoria's cool voice at her elbow. "Wait," the manager said, brows lifting in feigned concern. "I need you to come to my office for a routine review." Ava's throat constricted. The morning had already felt endless. What more could they want? She closed her eyes for a split second, willing her pulse to slow. Then she met Victoria's gaze and nodded once. In the narrow hallway behind the counter, the carpet muffled her footsteps. She passed the exit door that had almost felt like salvation this morning. Now, she realized, the ordeal wasn't quite over. Victoria's office was just off the lobby. Glass walls revealing curious onlookers pressed against their smartphones. Waiting for a show, Ava squared her shoulders and stepped inside. Victoria leaned against her desk, arms crossed. "Your persistence is admirable," she said, voice smooth as satin. "But tell me, how does it feel to be here without your mother's name carrying you?" Ava's jaw clenched. The question dripped with condescension, but she had an answer ready. "It feels like I'm being judged on something other than my work. I thought banks dealt in facts and figures." Her voice stayed steady, even if her hands trembled behind her back. "Facts and figures," Victoria repeated, a hint of amusement in her eyes. "Yet here we are." She tapped a document on her desk. "I was uninformed about Nova Capital's equity stake in this institution. It explains why you're so confident. But policies are policies." Ava realized with a start she was dealing not just with prejudice, but with a manager determined to wield every rule to her advantage. She had to keep her cool. "Then let's follow the policies. Let's do this right." Victoria pushed off her desk. "Good. I'll walk you through the remaining steps." Back at the counter, the teller handed Ava her deposit slip. "We've expedited your request. Your balance update will reflect by tomorrow." His tone was almost apologetic now, as if he'd been forced into compliance. Ava folded her slip and turned. She paused, gathering her resolve, then met Victoria's eyes. "Thank you," she said quietly. "I appreciate your help." Victoria blinked, surprised by the courtesy, but masked it instantly with a nod. "Have a good day." "Miss Sinclair." Ava stepped away from the counter into the lobby, the air feeling brittle and charged. She didn't rush for the exit this time. Instead, she paused near the center of the room, where every whisper and sideways glance had been directed moments before, and lifted her chin. Her heart still pounded, but this time with something else, a fierce pride. She'd navigated their gauntlet without breaking. She'd followed their rules, called out their bias with calm words, and still walked away upright. As she reached the doors, she barely registered the flurry of attention her departure attracted. She pushed through the heavy glass and stepped into the afternoon light, exhaling the tension she hadn't realized she was still holding. Later that evening, at home, she'd replay the encounter, how every demand for extra paperwork was a challenge they'd thrown at her, testing her confidence, daring her to break. But she'd stayed composed, disciplined, and ultimately in control. That night, before bed, she opened her laptop and reviewed the footage from Nova Ethics app. She had every interaction recorded, every unfair demand, every condescending remark, every VIP served while she waited. She filed the evidence away, determined to do more than deposit a check. Because if this bank thought they were merely testing a teenager, they didn't know they were provoking an entire force. Nova Capital's next-generation warrior, ready to turn prejudice into proof of her strength. And that realization, more than any motherly intervention or boardroom showdown, would fuel Ava's fire for days to come. Ava sat alone in the far corner of the lobby, phone pressed against her ear, only to have the caller ID blink out with a call-failed message. Her chest tightened. She'd dropped her backpack to the floor and fumbled for her mother's number, fingers trembling. But here, at Ivory Tower Private Bank, phones were against policy, as the receptionist had told her an hour ago. She tucked the phone back into her jacket pocket, jaw clenched. Her heart pounded so loudly she could almost hear her own pulse in the marble expanse around her. Every time someone glanced her way, she felt the weight of judgment settle like stones on her shoulders. Why is she still here? Shouldn't she just go home? Poor kid. Across the lobby, the family who'd breezed through paperwork earlier now lounged in plush leather chairs, sipping bottled water and chatting comfortably. Another man, crisply dressed, tapped away on his phone while a banker offered him a warm blanket of service. Nobody asked for extra forms. Nobody made them wait. Ava squeezed her eyes shut, recalling her mother's words from breakfast. If you ever need me, you call. Don't let protocol get in the way of what's right. She'd wanted to call her mother this morning, to cushion the blow, to feel that familiar calm. But at the door, Victoria's assistant had intercepted her. Phones aren't allowed past security, the assistant said sweetly, then clipped her accent with practiced neutrality. Our regulations are strict. Ava had tried to argue, cheeks burning. But it's my only way to get help. Policy is policy, the assistant had repeated, hand poised over the no phones sign. Ava had backed down, unwilling to spark an even bigger scene. But now, stranded without a lifeline, her confidence wavered. She tried again, this time under the guise of a status check. She'd spotted a customer using their phone discreetly earlier, so maybe, just maybe, she could slip it past security. But every glance she stole toward her pocket felt like an accusation. Her throat went dry. She forced herself to breathe. Minutes crawled by. The banquet of privileged customers continued around her, each moment a reminder that she didn't belong here, or at least, they hoped she wouldn't. She folded and unfolded her blazer at the elbows, straightened and re-straightened her skirt, as if an upright posture could somehow make the world be fair. Her rehearsed arguments evaporated. She'd practiced confidence in the mirror last night. I am professional. I deserve respect. Now she felt small, tethered to this lobby by invisible chains. She closed her eyes briefly, picturing her mother's serene smile and the towering offices of Nova Capital, places where competence mattered more than color. A knock at her elbow jolted her back to reality. The assistant from reception stood there, clipboard in hand. Miss Sinclair, you're free to go whenever you like. Just let us know. Ava blinked, searching for some scrap of relief. So, the deposit is final. The assistant's smile was polite but distant. Yes, everything's processed. She glanced toward a surveillance camera in the corner. Thank you for your patience. Thank you, Ava lied, standing. She hefted her backpack and slung her blazer over one arm, then hesitated as she passed the VIP counter. The teller had his back to her, whispering on the phone. No eye contact, no apology. Ava's stomach knotted. This rejection wasn't just paperwork. It was a message that she was unwanted. It pushed her confidence to the brink. She forced her shoulders back, inhaled, and turned toward the exit. But as she reached for the door, a soft voice called her name. Mrs. Sinclair. She froze. It was Ms. Chen, the executive assistant at Nova Capital. Dressed in her signature teal blazer, Ava had met her mother's inner circle in the Park Tower reception just yesterday. Missy? Chen's expression was kind but urgent. Can I walk with you to your car? She asked quietly, nodding toward the street. There's something you should know about today's transaction. Relief and apprehension tangled together in Ava's chest. Hope flickered. Maybe this was the moment to break her isolation, to share what happened this morning. Of course, she said, surprising herself with the steadiness of her own voice. As they walked side by side through the revolving doors, Ava felt the air lighten. The city's noise rushed in, honking taxis, distant chatter, the scent of roasting chestnuts from a street vendor. But beside her, Mrs. Chen sounded confidential. Your mother just called. She's on her way. Ava's breath caught. Her mother, her real lifeline, was coming. But more importantly, Ms. Chen continued. She asked me to retrieve the Nova Ethics report. I ran it just now. They'll want to talk. Her mind spun. The Nova Ethics app log, the recordings, the photos. The time-stamped notes had been quietly uploading all morning. Each snippet of injustice, each protocol excuse, had been documented. Now it was out of her hands, forwarded to the people who could enforce real change. They reached Ava's car, and Ms. Chen placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. You did everything right. I'm proud of you. Ava managed a small smile. I'm tired of feeling powerless.
Mrs.
Chen nodded. Powerless ends today. They'll call a review meeting. Full boardroom. They'll need to explain themselves. That word, explain, tasted sweet. The boardroom was where her mother planned to exert her silent power, revealing that Nova Capital owned enough equity to demand accountability, and that regulatory authorities had been alerted. It was the perfect counterpunch to hours of isolation. Ava slid into the back seat, unlocking her phone from her pocket. This time, the call went through. She heard her mother's calm voice, punctuated by a crisp, I'm on my way. Mom, Ava said, voice thick with relief. Thank you for not letting it end like that. Valerie's answer was firm but gentle. You never deserved that treatment. Sit tight. I'll meet you in the boardroom. Ava exhaled, finally allowing herself to relax. The isolation, the no phones policy, the stale lobby, all of it had served to magnify her feelings of helplessness. But in this moment, she realized that every rule they'd used to keep her out would be the very evidence that brought them to the table. As the car pulled away from the bank, Ava looked out the window at the ivory facade. She imagined that same lobby filled with bankers and regulators, facing her mother's quiet authority. Next time, she wouldn't be alone in that corner. She had her mother's power, the Nova Ethics Report, and her own unshakable resolve. And in the echo of that thought, Ava felt the last vestiges of her anxiety fade away, replaced by a calm certainty that, no matter what protocols they invoked, she would always find a way to be heard. Ava stood at the edge of the lobby, just inside the sliding glass doors of Ivory Tower Private Bank, clutching her folder like a shield. She'd been waiting there for what felt like an eternity, caught between the polished marble floors and the indifferent officers of customer service. The guard who'd escorted her earlier hovered nearby, arms crossed, keeping a watchful eye as if she were an exhibit on display. All around her, the bank's VIP clientele moved with ease. A laughing couple whisked off to a private lounge. A businessman tapped his phone and received immediate assistance. An elderly gentleman was greeted by name. But for Ava, every step she took was met with hushed whispers. Isn't that the CEO's daughter? I wonder what she did. They're so strict about rules for some people. Each murmur carried a sting sharper than any slap. She felt heat rising to her cheeks, and for a moment, her confidence wavered. She had rehearsed her composure, standing tall, speaking clearly, but the reality of being singled out in the center of this gleaming hall was humbling. A young woman passed by, eyes flicking to her phone camera. Ava caught a glimpse of a white screen in the woman's hand. She was recording. The thought of her humiliation going viral tightened Ava's throat. She pressed her lips together and took a careful breath. Her mother's voice echoed in her mind. True power doesn't need to shout. That lesson had carried Ava through countless academic debates and late-night study sessions. But now, in this cathedral of finance, the lesson felt both distant and urgently needed. Closing her eyes, she let her shoulders drop for a second. When she opened them again, she focused on one friendly face in the crowd, a middle-aged man who had earlier smiled apologetically as he passed her. He gave her a small nod, as if acknowledging her ordeal without intruding. It was the tiniest spark of solidarity, but it reminded her she wasn't entirely alone. A breath later, Victoria Hayes appeared at the far end of the lobby, moving with purposeful grace. She scanned the room, spotted Ava, and strolled over like a queen inspecting a chessboard. Miss Sinclair, Victoria called out, voice smooth, carrying just enough volume to attract attention. Your deposit has cleared. You may retrieve your documents inside. Ava stepped forward, folding her hands in front of her. She met Victoria's gaze, icy, professional, and received a curt nod in return. The guard stepped aside, allowing her passage back to the counter. Each footstep felt heavy, as if she were carrying the weight of every whispered comment in the room. When she reached the teller, she didn't look at him. Instead, she lifted her head and kept her eyes forward, determined to own this moment. The teller slid her papers across the counter without a word. As Ava gathered them, she felt eyes on her back, some curious, some judgmental, some sorry. She straightened her spine and squared her shoulders. As she turned to leave, a hush fell over the lobby. Everyone paused, then quietly refocused on their own business. In that brief lull, Ava sensed the shift. Her humiliation had created a crack in the bank's perfect veneer, and she was the one standing in it. She paused for a heartbeat, gathering her courage, then walked toward the exit, not with haste, but with purpose. The revolving doors spun slowly, each turn echoing against the marble. Outside, the screech of traffic and the hum of the city greeted her like an ally. Ava took a deep breath of cool air. The bank's glass front reflected her image back at her, a solitary figure framed by ivory pillars and tinted windows. She looked at herself, folder clutched, hair neatly in place, eyes bright with resolve. This was the moment when embarrassment could have swallowed her. Instead, she let it fuel her. She pressed her hand to her chest, felt her heartbeat steady. "This the stairs," the whispers. The cold courtesy was what she would transform into strength. Later, when she returned home, her mother was already waiting, seated at the kitchen island with 2 mugs of chamomile tea. "Come sit," Valerie said, voice gentle but firm. Ava slid into the stool, placing her folder on the countertop. She recounted every detail, the guard's watchful glare, the whispers, the camera phone, the way Victoria commanded the room without lifting her voice. Her mother listened without interruption, eyes softening with each revelation. When Ava finished, there was a moment of silence, only the soft clink of porcelain. "You handled that with grace," Valerie said finally. "Most people would have stormed out or broken down. You stood your ground." Ava exhaled, tension draining from her shoulders. "It felt like they were trying to break me." "They were," her mother agreed. "But you proved something else." She reached across and squeezed Ava's hand. "You proved you belong." Ava tilted her head, studying her mother's calm confidence. In that moment, she understood. The humiliation was part of the story, but it didn't have to be the ending. She had a choice, to let it define her, or to use it as fuel for what came next. That night, Ava opened her laptop and reviewed the Nova Ethics report one more time. She watched the video of the guard escorting her, the recording of voices, the timestamps of every demand. She organized the footage into a folder labeled Evidence. It was a record of injustice, yes, but also proof of her endurance. She closed her laptop and lay back on her bed, thinking of the next day's agenda. An afternoon meeting at her mother's office to debrief, and then preparations for the boardroom showdown. Tomorrow, Ivory Tower Bank would face the consequences of this public humiliation. Ava smiled to herself in the dark. The whispers in that lobby had been loud, but her own inner voice was louder. "I belong. I'm here, and I will be heard." And with that thought, she drifted off, ready for the storm she knew was coming. Ava hefted her backpack onto one shoulder and slipped back into the lobby, determined to use every second before her mother's entrance. The digital clock above the teller stations read 2:47 p.m., just 13 minutes until Valerie Sinclair would arrive. 13 minutes to gather proof that this wasn't just casual prejudice, but something more insidious brewing behind closed doors. She stepped into a seat near the kids' play corner, close enough to the VIP counter to observe, far enough to stay out of direct sight. Fanning her papers on her lap, she retrieved her phone, carefully switched to silent, and opened the Nova Ethics app. Its screen glowed with the morning's recordings and time-stamped notes. She tapped New Clip and held the camera at waist level, recording the polished marble floor, the reflection of her own shoes, then panned up to capture the corner of the counter where Victoria Hayes lingered. Victoria was speaking in hushed tones with Tom, the teller. Ava leaned forward, enough to catch just enough words. "Not our concern," Victoria whispered, voice low but urgent. "I've slipped the folder to the boardroom under the finance director's door. It contains the Nova Capital earnings report we can't expose yet." Ava's pulse jumped. Nova Capital earnings. Earnings weren't packaged into confidential boardroom dossiers for mere protocol. This sounded like corporate sabotage. She tapped marker on the app. Evidence of collusion. But technology alone wouldn't tell the whole story. She needed context. She closed the app and reached for her notebook, a leather-bound journal she always carried. Flipping to a fresh page, she jotted down the time, the location, and verbatim snippets. 2:47 p.m., Victoria to Tom. Folder to BDRM under FD's door. Contains Nova Capital earnings. Can't expose yet. She underlined Nova Capital earnings twice. Behind her, a group of well-dressed clients filed into the private lounge. Ava watched their faces, polished, indifferent, unconcerned with the drama unfolding at the counter. They treated the bank like a 5-star hotel. Meanwhile, Ava felt like a trespasser in her own story. She closed her notebook, popped her phone back into her pocket, and rose. She had to get closer to the boardroom door, just to see who was receiving the folder. 2 security guards flanked the entrance to the hallway leading upstairs. Their stances were relaxed, one browsing his phone, the other sipping a paper cup of coffee. Ava studied them, heart pounding. She walked purposefully toward the guards, nodding politely as though she belonged there. "Excuse me," she said softly as she passed. "Is this the way to the boardroom?" The guard with the coffee cup glanced up. "Elevator around the corner," he said, not lifting his head. "Thank you," Ava replied, edging past and turning toward the service elevator at the back. She pressed the call button. The doors slid open, revealing gleaming brass interiors. She stepped inside, punched 2 for the mezzanine level, and exhaled. Inside, the hallway was hushed, the carpet thick under her feet. Glass-paneled doors lined the corridor, each marked with a discreet plaque. Boardroom A, Finance Office, Executive Briefing Room. She paused at Boardroom A. The door was slightly ajar. Through the gap, she saw Victoria's silhouette leaning over a mahogany table, handing a large manila envelope marked confidential through the door. Ava flicked on her phone's camera again and slipped it into her coat pocket, capturing the sliver of folder and those bold letters. Then she noted the recipient's posture, the finance director, a tall man with a gray suit, reading the envelope's label, his brow furrowed. Her pulse raced. This was more than bias. This was an orchestrated leak of private Nova Capital data, evidence that Victoria was actively undermining her mother's firm. Ava tapped marker on the Nova Ethics app for that clip. 2. She retreated before anyone noticed, riding the elevator back down. Back in the lobby, she melted into a crowd near the main seating area, strategically placed to avoid detection. She rifled through her notebook and cross-checked her notes. 2. For 7 p.m. Folder of Nova Capital earnings redirected. Evidence of collusion. Can't expose yet. Finance director receiving folder marked confidential. She felt a surge of determination. This wasn't just about a discriminatory deposit or extra paperwork. It was corporate espionage. And she had the proof. A quiet murmur in the lobby caught her attention. A bank manager, not Victoria, was speaking with someone on the phone, his tone concerned. Yes. Full review, compliance breach, notify legal. Ava's stomach fluttered. The bank's internal alarms were already ringing. Her chest tightened with excitement. If the bank's legal department was being alerted, her mother's arrival in 10 minutes would be perfectly timed. Every piece of evidence she'd collected would corroborate the Nova Ethics log. She pressed her lips together, lifting her chin. It was time to prepare for the boardroom showdown. She plugged in her earbuds, played a low-volume voice memo, a track she'd recorded of Victoria's whispered confession, and practiced her calm, measured breathing. She needed to remain composed, professional, unflappable. Behind her, the teller station buzzed with routine transactions. Ava's gaze flicked back to the digital clock above the counter. 2:54 p.m. 6 minutes until Valerie would activate her emergency equity clause. 6 minutes to finalize her mental briefing. Her mind raced through the facts. Discriminatory treatment, evidence of bias delay and extra paperwork, collusion, Victoria's secret transfer of Nova Capital's earnings report, boardroom leak, confidential folder received by finance director, regulatory alert, bank's legal team has been notified via internal call. 4 pillars of proof, all pointing to the same conclusion. Ivory Tower private bank had breached its own policies, colluded with competitors, and blatantly discriminated against a customer. And that customer was the daughter of a major stakeholder. Ava tightened the strap on her backpack, sliding her notebook inside. She unclipped the Nova Ethics app from the top of her phone and tucked it safely away. She needed to be invisible now, not only to observe, but also to prepare for her mother's entrance. At 2:57 p.m., Ms. Chen, the executive assistant, approached her quietly. "Your mother's here," she said, nodding toward the revolving doors. Boardroom. A. Now, Ava stood, folding her blazer neatly over her arm. She met Ms. Chen's eyes. "Thank you." She took a deep breath, squared her shoulders, and walked toward the boardroom entrance. As the doors swung open, a hush fell over the room of executives. Victoria froze mid-sentence. The finance director looked up in surprise, and the legal counsel shifted in his seat. Ava stepped inside, her expression calm, and armed with the evidence that would shatter the carefully constructed facade of that bank. Because she wasn't just a victim anymore. She was the keeper of the truth. And in that moment, she felt more powerful than any prejudice could ever make her feel powerless. The lobby clock blinked 2:55 p.m. in bright red digits. 5 minutes until Valerie Sinclair would take control of Ivory Tower Bank. Ava stood in a quiet corner just outside the boardroom entrance, heart already thrumming with electric anticipation. This was the moment she'd been waiting for, the point of no return. She pressed her palm against the cool marble wall, slid her phone from her pocket, and tapped open the Nova Ethics app. A half-transparent countdown timer appeared on the screen. 0500 and ticking. With a steady thumb, she hit start, and the numbers began their slow, relentless march toward 0. Ava felt her pulse sync with the ticking digits. Every second felt like a drumbeat in her chest. 04. 59. 04. 58. 4. 57. She lowered the phone and exhaled. Behind her, muffled voices drifted from inside the boardroom. Victoria's clipped laughter. The finance director's murmured assent. But Ava blocked it all out, focusing on the rhythm of her own breath. She glanced at her notebook, flipping to the page where she'd summarized the evidence. Victoria Hayes's whisper about Nova Capital earnings. The confidential folder slipped under the finance director's door. The compliance call to legal. 4 bullet points, each one a nail in the coffin of the bank's clean reputation. Tell us where you're watching from. The voiceover from her morning hook echoed in her mind, reminding her this was also a show, a high-stakes drama playing out for anyone watching. With 4 minutes left, Ava slipped her phone back into her pocket and smoothed out her blazer. She checked her reflection in a polished brass plaque by the door. Hair neat, shoulders squared, expression calm but fierce. This was her moment, as much Ava Sinclair as granddaughter of New York's financial elite. 04. A hand tapped her shoulder. She turned to see Mrs. Chen, her mother's executive assistant, nodding toward the boardroom. 15 guests are already there, Ms. Chen whispered. Your mother's on her way in. Ava nodded and took a final deep breath. She walked those last few steps to the glass door, letting her reflection slip into view behind her. Through the glass, she could see Valerie Sinclair at the head of the long mahogany table, standing tall with that signature quiet confidence. Executives clustered around her, legal counsel, compliance officers, the finance director she'd seen receiving the folder. With 3 minutes left, the room's chatter dipped as Ava approached. She drew herself up straight, slid her hand across the cool glass to swing the door open, and stepped inside. 03. Conversation stuttered to silence. Heads turned. Victoria froze mid-sentence, lips parting. The finance director held the manila envelope in his hands, expression pinched. Legal counsel glanced nervously at the silent phone in his palm. He'd presumably just been alerted to the internal breach. Valerie's gaze swept the room, calm but commanding. She pivoted toward the glass door where Ava stood, with a single nod. She acknowledged her daughter's entrance without missing a beat in her speech. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining on such short notice. We have serious matters to address. 02:30. Ava slid into the only empty chair nearest the door, phone tucked in her lap. Her eyes flicked to the timer app again. 02:27, then back to her mother. The room felt smaller now, the high ceiling and glass walls closing in around the hush of anticipation. She exhaled slowly, focusing on the memory of every injustice she'd endured this morning. Extra documents, forced waiting, whispered judgments. None of that had broken her. If anything, it had sharpened her resolve. Valerie clicked a remote. A projector came to life, displaying on the wall a sleek slide. Emergency equity clause invoked. Below it, a bullet point. Nova Capital holds 18% stake in Ivory Tower Bank. And beneath that, in red letters, all transactions temporarily suspended. A gasp rippled across the room. The finance director's jaw dropped as he glanced at the document in his hands. 2. Valerie spoke without raising her voice. As of this moment, the emergency equity clause in our shareholder agreement is activated. All financial operations at Ivory Tower Private Bank are to be suspended immediately until a full compliance review is completed. Silence pressed in. Someone cleared their throat. Victoria's guard. Perhaps, but no one dared interrupt. 1:15. Ava felt the weight of the room shift. She had watched that manager reduce her to a confused teenager. Now she witnessed the same manager shrink under the authority of shareholder power. Valerie turned to her daughter and gave a slight, proud smile. Ava, would you care to share the findings you collected? Ava rose. She steadied herself on the back of her chair. Thank you, Mom. Her voice was quiet but carried crystal clear across the boardroom. She tapped her phone to unlock the Nova ethics clips she'd marked. Clip 1. Victoria Hayes ordering unequal treatment at the VIP counter. Clip 2. Victoria's whispered instruction to slip confidential Nova Capital earnings to the finance director. Clip 3. Teller Tom's apology after compliance pressure. Clip 4. The compliance call snippet overheard at 2:48 p.m. As she played the first clip, the room fell into a hush so complete you could hear the projector's hum. People exchanged glances. Shock, disbelief, a prick of shame. 45. Ava let each clip run its course, then advanced to the next. The final clip was the compliance officer's own voice, confirming the breach. She tapped stop at the end, and the screen went dark. Her last words echoed. Thank you. That concludes my documentation. 30. Valerie stood and stepped forward, placing a hand on her daughter's shoulder. We will convene a committee to address these misconducts immediately. Ms. Hayes, you are suspended pending investigation. Security, please escort her out. Victoria rose, face pale, her carefully maintained poise abandoned. She glanced at Ava, surprise, then fury, before she was led away. 10. Ava's chest tightened, but she held her posture. She exchanged a brief glance with Miss Chen, who offered a small, proud nod. The countdown hit 0. A soft chime from Ava's phone marked the end of her 5-minute gauntlet. Valerie raised her hand and addressed the room. This bank will implement equitable service training immediately. We'll also review all internal communications for further breaches. Our commitment to integrity is non-negotiable. A hushed chorus of agreement rippled through the seats. The tension drained away, replaced by a sense that justice had been served. Ava sank back into her chair, adrenaline still humming. She'd transformed her bewilderment into evidence and her isolation into impact. In those 5 minutes, she'd flipped the script, no longer the powerless teenager in the lobby, but the catalyst for institutional reform. As the executives filed out to begin formal proceedings, Ava let herself smile. The next chapter would be for cleanup and policy changes, but right now, she basked in the quiet triumph of the moment. Because 5 minutes had been all it took. Ava pressed her back against the cool marble wall just outside Conference Room A. Heart hammering so loud she was certain the executives inside could hear it if the door weren't so thick. Through the narrow glass panel, she could see Victoria Hayes leaning in close to the finance director, Andrew Keller. Their voices low enough to be private. At least they thought. She tapped her phone to record audio, then stashed it against her leg, determined not to miss a single word. Inside, Victoria's tone was smooth, practiced. We need to move that Nova Capital earnings report under the rug, she hissed. If word leaks that we treated their shareholder's daughter like a criminal, we'll have regulators breathing down our necks. Andrew ran a hand through his silver-streaked hair. I've already briefed legal. They're preparing a preemptive compliance memo. Nice of us to demonstrate transparency. But we need to act fast. Victoria nodded. She glanced out the window at the lobby, then back at Andrew. Good. Once our transparency statement is live, we'll frame Ava's treatment as a simple misunderstanding. Overzealous adherence to policy. Have control of the internal comms draft ready. And destroy those CCTV snippets that show me giving the order. Ava's chest tightened. She lifted her phone again, capturing each word. Destroy the footage. This was more than ugly bias. It was active cover-up. She let her breath out slowly, reined in her shock, and replaced it with fierce determination. This was exactly the proof she needed. Victoria continued. Andrew, I want you to quietly inform your team to shuttle any paper evidence, notes, Emails into the shredder by close of business. No trace. And then we'll pivot the narrative. Emphasize how diligent we are about document security and policy compliance. There it was, in black and white. Confession of corporate espionage and obstruction of justice. Ava felt bile rise in her throat. Her knuckles whitened as she gripped her phone. She weighed her next move carefully. Expose them now and risk being dismissed as a nervous teenager, or gather the final piece that would make this airtight. She reached for her notebook, hands trembling, and scribbled. Victoria and Andrew conspiring to destroy CCTV and shred documents. Plan to spin story with transparency statement. Legal dept preparing compliance memo. Preemptive cover. She underlined destroy and shred twice, through the glass. Andrew tapped a folder marked compliance draft on the conference table. I'll have IT flag those recorded clips as privileged attorney-client. They'll be locked down immediately. The words landed like a punch. They planned to bury every scrap of evidence, including the very app recording she held, by invoking legal privilege. Ava knew it was now or never. She whispered to herself. Hold steady. She slipped a thumb drive from her pocket, one she'd prepared earlier, and plugged it into her phone's port. In seconds, the Nova Ethics app began exporting her marked clips and notes directly onto the drive. It glowed at her in the dim hallway light. Victoria straightened, smoothing the lapels of her tailored jacket. Once the press release is queued for midnight, we'll circle back here. We've got 5 minutes before the meeting resumes. Ava's pulse surged. 5 minutes. She quietly edged toward the boardroom door, burning to slip inside and plant that drive on the conference table. But one more moment of patience was needed. She nearly reached for the handle, then paused. Brow furrowed. She had to time this perfectly. If she was caught in the act, they'd lock her in some office until her mother arrived, and her evidence would be gone. Through the glass, she watched 2 junior bankers hover by the doorway. They were flanked by a security guard, attentively awaiting Victoria's signal. Not a chance to slip past. Ava retreated a few steps and crouched behind a decorative fern. She tapped her phone. 01, 51 minute 50 left. Her heart drummed. She dialed a quick code on the Nova Ethics app to trigger a silent alert to the regulatory board. Something she'd prepared with her mother's legal team. They'd receive her uploaded files the moment it hit send. There was no going back. Inside the boardroom, Victoria was gathering her notes. All right, she said, voice loud enough to carry beyond the glass. Let's reconvene. She started to tap on her tablet, but paused, as though sensing something. Ava froze. Victoria's eyes flicked to the door. For a second, Ava thought she was caught, blood pounding at her temples. But Victoria's gaze settled on nothing, and she resumed her movement, flicking her screen on. The boardroom table was a tableau of power. Andrew Keller, folding the confidential envelope as though it were nothing more than trivial mail. The legal counsel, Petrakis, scrolling on his tablet. Compliance officers poised to nod in agreement with any spin, and scattered across the glossy surface, Victoria's neatly typed notes. Ava exhaled without realizing it. She still had time. She scooted from fern to fern, slipping the thumb drive from her pocket. At the door handle, she hesitated a moment, imagining the scene when her mother burst in. She'd want evidence she could pick up and present immediately. She carefully taped the drive to the underside of a fold in a stack of the very compliance drafts. It stuck out just enough that she'd be able to retrieve it later, but not so much it would fall off. She straightened and leaned back into the shadows. There was a faint click as Victoria signaled the guard to reopen the door. The executives re-entered, and the lobby's ambient murmur drifted in. Ava stood, dusted off her jeans, and walked back toward her spot by the admiring nods of Ms. Chen. She'd planted her evidence, but better still, the regulator alert was already en route. She checked her phone. 45 seconds. Taking a deep breath, she pressed the send button on Nova Ethics app. A discreet notification animation spun for a moment, then disappeared. Her clips and notes on every conspiratorial word were transmitting now to the proper authorities. Delivered. The app confirmed with a barely noticeable tap. Ava folded her arms. Mission accomplished. 20. Behind her, the boardroom doors swung open and Victoria stood at the head of the table once more, clearing her throat. The finance director looked ready to object. But Victoria gave a curt nod, and he fell silent. Ava steadied herself. She had no camera on her, no phone in view. In 30 seconds, her evidence would reach auditors and regulators who would insist on opening the bank's files. 10.
Miss.
Chen slipped beside her and whispered, "Everything's set." Ava nodded. "Thank you, Zero. 05. The lobby clock flipped to 3:00 p.m., the precise moment her mother's invitation for a full review would become public. And in that instant, as the final seconds ticked away, Ava felt the tension explode into action. No longer sidelined by bias or bullied by policy, she was armed not just with her mother's shareholding power, but with the incontrovertible truth. When the boardroom conversation resumed, it would not be a closed-door discussion of cover-ups. It would be a reckoning. And Ava, standing outside in the soft hallway light, felt a fierce, ringing satisfaction. The calm before the storm had cracked. Now, the real whirlwind was about to begin. Valerie Sinclair steps into the glass-walled boardroom like a calm tide rising, her presence commanding immediate attention. The room goes silent. Legal counsel, compliance officers, finance director Andrew Keller, even Victoria Hayes herself pause in mid-sentence. Ava stands just inside the door, phone tucked away but ready, heart still thundering. The last 5 minutes have been a blur of whispered conversations and covert evidence planting. Now it's time to bring the whole thing into the light. Valerie raises one hand, palm open, and the projector screen behind her flickers. A title slide appears. Emergency equity clause invoked, followed by Nova Capital, 18% shareholder stake. Beneath it, bold red text. All transactions suspended pending compliance review. Gasps ripple through the room. Andrew's mouth drops open. Victoria's confident mask cracks. Calmly, Valerie says, "Good afternoon. As a major shareholder and under the emergency equity clause in our charter, I am temporarily suspending all bank operations effective immediately. We will conduct a full compliance and anti-discrimination audit." She clicks a remote, advancing to a new slide. A timeline of Ava's evidence. The boardroom lights dim. Audio plays. Clip 1. Victoria's curt refusal at the VIP counter. Clip 2. The whispered order to slip Nova Capital's earnings report. Clip 3. Instructions to destroy CCTV footage and shred documents. Clip 4. Confirmation call to legal emphasizing no traces. Each clip plays in crisp clarity. Faces around the table grow pale. Legal counsel Petrakis shifts uncomfortably. Compliance officer Nguyen crosses her arms, eyes widening at the admission of planned cover-up. Valerie turns to Ava and nods. Ava steps forward, voice steady but clear. These recordings, along with Nova ethics logs, show not only discriminatory treatment, but active obstruction of justice. We have confirmation that policies were weaponized against me simply because of my age and race. And that evidence was threatened with destruction. A hush follows her words. Then Valerie addresses Victoria directly. "Ms. Hayes, your actions breach both our internal codes and federal banking regulations. You are suspended pending investigation. Security, please escort her from the premises." Victoria rises, sputtering, eyes flashing outrage.
"You can't do this."
Valerie cuts her off. "I can and I will. This institution must be held to the highest standard." 2 security officers step forward. Victoria glares at Ava, a blend of fury and humiliation, before she's let out. Shoulders rigid, dignity in tatters. With Victoria gone, the boardroom's tension shifts. Andrew clears his throat. "Ms. Sinclair, this is unprecedented." Valerie nods. "Unprecedented times call for decisive action. I propose we immediately implement these reforms. Institute mandatory anti-bias training bank-wide. Publish a public apology and compensation offer to Mrs. Zone. Ava Sinclair. Establish a third-party oversight committee." Heads around the table bob in agreement. Compliance officer Nguyen adds, "We'll draft policy language and submit to regulators by end of day." Ava exhales, relief and pride washing over her. She glances at her mother, steady, authoritative, unwavering. Valerie turns back to the room. "Let this be a lesson. Power used responsibly can correct injustice. My daughter proved that a voice, even at 16, can demand accountability." Murmurs of gratitude and apology ripple through the executives. Andrew approaches Ava and offers a tentative smile. "I'm sorry for how you were treated. Thank you for your courage." Ava meets his gaze, accepting the apology without malice. Thank you, she replies. Outside the boardroom,
Mrs.
Chen greets them with quiet congratulations. Ava's legs feel unsteady, but her spirit is soaring. She did more than survive. She catalyzed real change. As they descend the elevator, Ava leans into her mother. I couldn't have done that without you. Valerie slips an arm around her. You did all the heavy lifting. Kiddo, I'm just proud to stand with you. In those moments, Ava realizes the power of silent strength, of truth backed by evidence, and of a single voice refusing to be ignored. The storm of prejudice has been met with a perfect countercurrent of justice, and this boardroom showdown will echo far beyond these walls. The boardroom still hummed with tension when Valerie Sinclair tapped her remote one last time. The emergency equity clause slide disappeared, and she turned full face to the assembled executives, her eyes steady. Today's events have laid bare two failings, she began, voice calm but firm. First, a failure of empathy. Hayes' decision to single out my daughter. And second, a failure of integrity. Her attempt to conceal evidence. A hush fell. Victoria Hayes sat at the back, shoulders hunched. Under the watchful gaze of every compliance officer and legal counsel, Valerie took a breath.
Ms.
Hayes, you are hereby suspended, effective immediately. Our internal investigation will proceed under third-party oversight. She paused, letting the weight of her words sink in. Victoria's knuckles whitened on the conference table as she tried to speak, but no sound came. The room's silence spoke louder than any argument. Now, Valerie continued, swiveling to face the rest of the board. We will take corrective action. I propose the immediate adoption of the equitable banking policy. She clicked, and a new slide appeared listing 3 bullet points. Mandatory anti-bias training for all staff within 30 days. Standardized document review protocols to eliminate subjective gatekeeping. Quarterly audits by an independent committee reporting directly to the board. We will sign this policy today, Valerie said, pressing a digital signature pad on the table. A murmur of agreement rippled through the room as other executives followed suit on their pads. Across the table, Andrew Keller cleared his throat. I believe I speak for everyone when I say these measures are overdue and necessary. He nodded toward the legal counsel. We'll file the updated policy with regulators by tomorrow morning. The compliance director, Nguyen, smiled with relief. Our team will draft the training modules and ensure they're rolled out bank-wide. Valerie turned and addressed the solitary figure of Mrs. Hayes once more. I expect full cooperation during the investigation. This bank's reputation depends on accountability. Victoria finally found her voice, brittle and low. You can't just... Valerie cut in quietly. But I can. Miss Hayes, and I have. 2 security officers stepped forward. Ms. Hayes rose, face a mask of defeat. She shot a last glare at Ava, an acknowledgement of her own downfall, before being led out. Ava, seated near the front, felt a rush of relief. The tension in her shoulders eased as the final executive signed the policy. She exchanged a glance with Ms. Chen, who offered a warm, proud smile. Valerie turned to Ava and invited her forward. Ava, would you care to make the final entry? Ava stood and approached the table, leaning over the signature pad. She tapped her name deliberately. Ava Sinclair. The pad emitted a soft beep. Done, she said, voice steady. The room broke into soft applause. Sincere this time, free of embarrassment. Valerie stepped aside. This policy isn't just about my daughter. It's about ensuring that no one else, no matter their background, feels unwelcome here. A junior executive rose, and on my part, I apologize to Ms. Sinclair for our failures. We'll do better. Ava nodded, offering a genuine smile. Thank you. As the meeting concluded, the executives filed out to implement the new measures. Legal counsel lingered to confirm filings. Compliance officers made calls to training vendors, and Andrew Keller came by Ava's side. He squeezed her shoulder. I'm sorry you had to prove this point so publicly, but you've made us a stronger institution. Ava looked around the emptied boardroom. This space that had once symbolized power, wielded unfairly, was now reshaped by her truth. She drew in a deep breath, feeling the final knot of anxiety unravel. Outside, in the hallway,
Ms.
Chen joined them. They've already scheduled the first bias training session next week. Ava's lips curved into a relaxed grin. I can't wait to see it in action. As they rode the elevator down, Ava leaned into her mother. "It feels right," she said quietly. Valerie slipped an arm around her. "You made it right." In that moment, Ava knew this wasn't just a victory for herself. It was a turning point for everyone at Ivory Tower Bank. The verdict was in, the policies were signed, and justice had been served. For Ava, the relief was profound. The institution that had once humiliated her now stood reformed in its light. By the time Ava returned to Ivory Tower Private Bank a week later, the lobby felt different, still gleaming, but with an undercurrent of optimism instead of tension. A row of posters by the entrance announced the Equitable Banking Initiative, complete with QR codes for employees to enroll in mandatory anti-bias training. A friendly voice called her name. It was Tom, the teller who'd first hesitated to process her deposit, then seconded her when Victoria pushed him too far. But today, his uniform bore a new badge, VIP Client Relations Manager. He beamed as Ava approached.
Ms.
Sinclair. Tom greeted, extending a hand. "I just wanted to say thank you for helping us realize we needed to change. It's been an honor to lead our new VIP team." Ava smiled, remembering the way he'd softened after seeing how unfairly she'd been treated. "Congratulations," she said. "You've earned it." Tom nodded, his eyes bright. "I wouldn't be here if you hadn't stood your ground." The board saw the footage, felt the impact. "Now, I get to train our staff on empathy and proper protocol." Across the lobby, a group of bankers left a training room, laughing as they compared notes on their first day of the anti-bias course. Posters inside proclaimed, "Recognize unconscious bias. Treat every customer with dignity. Report and rectify discrimination." Ava walked past them, feeling a warm swell of pride. This wasn't just a one-off victory, it was a cultural shift. At the VIP counter, she spotted Miss Ngui from compliance, who had championed the quarterly audits. Their eyes met, and she offered Ava a thumbs up. A small gesture, but it spoke volumes about how far the institution had come. Outside,
Mrs.
Chen awaited her with a printed copy of the bank's equitable banking policy, bound and signed by the entire board. "We're putting this on display in the lobby today," she said. "So every customer and employee knows where we stand." Ava took the booklet, running her fingers over the embossed logo. "It's more than words," she said. "It's a promise."
Ms.
Chen nodded. "And a commitment we'll keep." As Ava stepped out into the crisp afternoon air, she reflected on the journey. From huddled isolation in the marble lobby, Chapter 4, to gathering damning evidence, Chapter 6-8, to the boardroom showdown, Chapter 9. And finally, today's celebration of progress. She pulled out her phone and snapped a quick photo of the new training poster. Then she tapped a message to her mother. "They're doing it. We did it." Valerie's reply came instantly. "So proud of you. On to bigger things." Ava slipped her phone into her pocket and walked away from the bank. Heartlight, the teller's promotion, the training rollout, the policy on display, all real, lasting change born from one teenager's resolve. And in that moment, Ava knew that fairness wasn't a fleeting victory. It was the foundation for every story yet to come. Ava stood on the sunlit steps of Ivory Tower Private Bank, the afternoon breeze tangling her hair as she watched her mother's car pull away. Behind her, the grand marble facade felt less like a battleground and more like a monument to change. She'd walked these steps first as a humiliated teenager, phone dead, confidence shaken. Now she left as a catalyst for reform. She reached into her pocket, thumb hovering over the post button on her phone's home screen. On the screen lay a short video, highlights of her evidence clips, the boardroom takeaway slide, and footage of Tom's promotion announcement. With a deep breath, she hit share. Instantly, the video began circulating, Nova Ethics logo in the corner, the banner Equitable Banking across the bottom. Comments streamed almost immediately. "Wow, she's amazing. This is the future of banking. Tell us where you're watching from." Ava tapped a few replies. Grateful for the global support, friends from school sent encouraging emojis. Colleagues at Nova Capital messaged virtual high fives. She smiled, realizing her story had grown beyond this one institution. Pulling her jacket tighter, she scanned the plaza. A poster by the entrance now proclaimed, "Our commitment, dignity and respect for all customers," complete with QR codes linking to training modules. Below it, a small plaque read, "Inspired by Ava Sinclair's courage." Tears prickled at the corners of her eyes, not from sadness, but from pride, her mother's quiet strength. Her own persistence and the support of so many had turned a moment of humiliation into a lasting legacy. Ava dialed her best friend back home. "Hey," she said, voice bright.
Guess what?
"The bank's rolling out a full audit. New policies. The works." Her friend whooped on the other end. "That's incredible. You've inspired so many people, me included." "Thanks," Ava laughed. "Next stop, Nova Capital's Summer Summit. I'll be presenting our retention strategy and talking about ethics in finance." She slipped her phone into her pocket and turned toward the street, the city's rhythm calling her forward. Every honk and footstep felt like part of a chorus celebrating justice. As she walked away, Ava thought of the hundreds of young people watching her video right this second. She hoped they'd see not just the injustice, but the possibility of change, how one voice, backed by truth and resolve, could reshape an entire institution. And with that, she stepped into her next chapter, one defined by purpose, powered by empathy, and guided by the unshakable belief that fairness is worth fighting for. If you believe everyone deserves fair treatment, tap that and share this video to spread the word about equitable banking.